So Gilad, thank you for joining us. I'm going to go straight into these questions. You're not a typical agritech founder. What made you do it?
Oliver, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
What made me do it?
Gilad, maybe it's worth, I haven't given a summary of your background. I think it's really interesting to the audience who comes to this, not from the academic side, from a different route.
Yeah. It's a good question. What made me do it? I think that it came very naturally to me. I think I had the chance to look at a paper that I wrote about 12 years ago when I started my business school. And it was one of these kind of generic questions of what do you want to do 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, and 10 years down the road. And I was surprised at how much kind of that lived to be the case. I think at the time I didn't even give it too much thought. I tried to write what I think that the business school would want to hear, but I wrote that I want to do an MBA, and then would like to work for a few years as a professional venture capital investor in the food and agricultural technology space, and then start my own company in the space. And that's how my career evolved. In the same way. So if I think about why I did it, I think that maybe the culture where I grew up in my family was always very supportive of entrepreneurship. Israel is a very good birthplace of many companies. And more personally, I'm very passionate about both agriculture and science. Agriculture, I like the fact that it comes, again, very naturally. When people start talking to me about cryptocurrency or quantum computing, I get lost very quickly, but I think myself and most others, we can understand very quickly the need for people to eat and live healthy lives. And even though I'm not an academic, I've never studied biology or genetics. One of my favorite things to do as the CEO of the company is sit with the scientists and hypothesize and think about new things that can be done. So I feel very fortunate to be doing something that I like to do.
Brilliant, thank you. So I just want to explore what makes a good CEO. You've been a CEO of Tropic now for what, since 2016, was it founded? So you've met lots of different people over the last 5 years. What do you think the defining characteristics of a really effective CEO of a company? And this is a company that went from foundation to raising millions of dollars in a global VC round.
First of all, I don't know that I'm a good CEO. I hope so. I think we definitely try to evolve, as Simon said, become better every day. There's many things that are important, many things that can go wrong. But if I'll try to maybe put a finger on a couple of things that I think are critical. One very general, I think that even though we see many different types of CEOs and many different types of role models, we can say that Elon Musk is a very different person to Mark Zuckerberg or anyone else. What I do think that is very important is being very focused and almost obsessive about your work. From my personal experience, I feel that people who succeed in their work are very much immersed in it. It's very hard to be a part-time CEO, a part-time founder. You need to kind of be fully consumed in it and find ways for it in different parts of your life. This is, again, my thought. The second part, and I think something that has been very helpful for me, so I didn't mention it, but I started my adult career as a ship commander in the Israeli Navy for about 6 years. And one of the things that kind of living in tight compartments with a lot of young and ambitious people have taught me is the ability to be a little bit of a mediator. I think in any company, whether it's 5 people or 500 people, there needs to be room for everyone to evolve, to have their room. Understanding that people are motivated by different things. And maybe the part of the CEO is sometimes not necessarily just to say, okay, this is the way that we are heading, but just also making sure that everyone is following and everyone is part of the journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a question I didn't put on the list, but you built a big team now. I think Tropic employs north of 30 people.
So we are today about 115 professionals at Tropic.
Well north of 30.
Yeah, no problem.
When you're building a team and as the company grows, what are the top tips you might have for this audience? So this is a group of people that hopefully will start a company that's going to be where Tropic is now. This time.
And again, I'll take everything that I say. I will advise everyone to take with a grain of salt. We're also learning. If you would have asked me this question 3 years ago or 3 years from now, we might receive different answers. First of all, from a very practical perspective, I will advise people to have professional HR functions internally already at an early stage. The same way that you would want a very good scientist or very good bioinformatician to run your research, you would want a very good HR professional to help you recruit the best people and make sure that they have the right terms to work. So this is one advice. And I'm saying it because I do see many that kind of push it to much later stages, and it can get very, very time consuming. And the cost of getting it wrong can be much higher than the cost of getting a good HR professional. So this is one. I would say secondly, it's very important. So when I look at CVs and I recruit people, the one thing that I look for the most is signs of excellence. I think especially in a startup environment where everyone's contribution is there's a lot of weight to it. It's important to bring people who kind of lift the ship above the water rather than the other way around. And lastly, which is again very, very generic, but it's always incredibly true. It has to do with the cultural fit. We've had the experience in the past of bringing people, for example, from very large organizations or even from very small organizations that just don't necessarily are a good fit with, let's call it a very fast-moving, dynamic environment. The reality is, and again, Simon touched on it in a fantastic way, that in a startup, things can move very differently. Some, people might work on a project for a while, and then there's a decision that's made to change direction. Some people are just more adapted to this type of dynamic environment.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So, can I take you to the fundraising process? A broad question. You've raised from angels, you've raised from VCs in the US, Europe. What do investors do that drive you mad? And how can we as investors and how can companies work with investors to successfully close large raises?
Yeah. It's a good question, and I'll answer it in a different way.
Be as honest as you like. We're not going to get offended. Yeah.
Don't worry. I'm not holding back. It's you've known me for enough time to.
Yeah. I'm
not in the business of. But I will stand behind what I'm saying now 100%. Whatever an investor does when sending emails or requests, etc. Oliver, hopefully you've seen it in your past. I always reply, whatever you need, I'm happy to support you 100% tomorrow morning, tonight, etc. And I think it's a very good philosophy for a founder and CEO, because we take money from people. I think it's our obligation to make sure that they get the best attention possible. And spending just the time and energy on trying to think about, how, why are they acting the way they are, etc. It's a waste of time. Eventually, they're going to get what they need. A few tips in that I can say is, first of all, one thing that was we've started from day one of the company was actually to send all of our shareholders and investors a letter, a report once a quarter that details our progress. It's again nothing very long. It's usually 2 or 3 pages with lots of pictures of the team and the work that we're doing. And I think that in a way we've trained our shareholders to expect that letter. So instead of them kind of reaching out to us every other week, what's going on, what happened with this, they know that they're expecting a letter at the end of the quarter. If we kind of miss, and we see it because if we don't send that letter kind of 2 weeks later, we have people reaching out to us the letter, we'd love to learn. So first of all, manage up, in the sense of make sure that, push information rather than, expect 70 people to reach out to you and ask for questions. The other thing is be very, very clear about your expectations and timelines, etc. I think that it's very easy as a young company when you are desperate for money to kind of be very very accepting of whatever the investor tells you. I think it's very important at the beginning of any relationship is to tell, okay, this is what we're expecting, these are the terms, this is when we would like to finish the process. Just have a control so things don't drag too long or there's a misalignment of expectations.
Thank you. So 2 more questions, but I'm going to kind of roll them in. So can you go back to the first year of Tropic, when you first founded it? What do you think were the hardest things to achieve?
Yeah. So again, I keep contradicting your questions, but I actually remember the first year was a phenomenal year. It was really, every year becomes harder. It doesn't get easier.
Okay.
Year 1, I remember it. I get a mist in my eyes. It was so fun. The hardest part in the beginning is to, especially if you're a sole founder, or not a sole founder, if it's your idea and you're basically by yourself, is to attract the first team, approaching people and saying, I have a phenomenal idea, I really believe in it, I would love for you to join me as my co-founder or as an employee, etc. You're basically selling your vision and you're requesting people maybe to leave jobs with security or other positions, etc., and take a risk with you. And you have to accept that not all people will do that. But with that, I think that there are people that I approach very early processes. I'm very, very happy that they said no, because I know today that based on everything that we've gone through, that these would have been the wrong partners. So the hardest, most challenging is just to find the people that you're going to get married with and build a good family and enjoy working with 5 or 50 years later.
Yeah, as you enter the difficult teenage years of the company's formation. So last question, and thank you. It's lonely being a CEO. You've got to do a bit of everything. How do you sanity check your plans? How do you be certain that you're doing the right thing?
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think again, the loneliness of the CEO is something that I've learned over time. It's not just a cliche. It has to do a lot with responsibility.
Yeah.
Eventually, everyone else in the company can shift responsibility upwards, but eventually everything kind of ends with the CEO. So it is a lonely position, and you do have to make a lot of big decisions, and just want to make sure that you are, you're not just kind of flying in your head, and there's no sanity around it. For me personally, some of the things that are very good is I do speak quite a lot with my wife, who's an entrepreneur in her own right, and she has absolutely no problem telling me that I'm an idiot or that I'm doing something stupid. This is one. For me also, I try to do as much sports as possible, so running almost every day, just to clear the head and be able to think properly and take into advice a lot of the feedback from the team. And lastly, it has to do with the team. And we work very hard to build an environment of where people feel very comfortable raising their hands and saying what they think. And it happens, I do sometimes things that one of the other managers or my partners would come and say, we think it's a mistake. And I'll be stupid not to consider it, and I can say that multiple times I've changed my direction or changed my mind or changed my behavior based on feedback that I received from our team.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Gilad. So